We're practitioners. Our work has no value if it doesn't have practical application. And if we think a situation is getting to the point where we will no longer be able to effectively control pests and diseases, then it's a matter of concern, irrespective of whether you're involved in the industrial end of the argument or the academic end of the argument. The analogy, I think, is with clinical medicine, where obviously to control diseases of humans and animals, we use antibiotics, and I think everyone will be familiar with the problems of antibiotic resistance, that if you use a chemical over a period of time, the microbial world unfortunately has the ability to evolve resistance, and to counter that resistance we need to have other effective chemistry available. So if you reduce your portfolio of available chemistry, ultimately you get to a point where you may not be able to manage the evolution of resistance in the microbial community. And that's very much the situation we're facing with some plant pathogens now, and certainly with some insect pests. That resistance is already a problem, even with our existing portfolio of chemistry. And if we make that portfolio narrower than it currently is, then the problems of resistance will only increase.
That's very interesting. I mean, isn't that something you can solve through innovation, just come up with some new chemicals? This will be an incentive for the companies to develop more active ingredients?
Well, of course, every company has its discovery pipeline. The process becomes more and more expensive for companies. The regulations that are placed on registering compounds become ever more restrictive. So the pipeline, while we endeavour as best we can to keep it healthy, is becoming smaller with time. And the rate at which chemistry is being lost from the marketplace is far exceeding our ability to replace it with new chemistry. And I think that's the concern, that ultimately one will reach a point where, despite the innovation of science and industry, we may not be able to produce sufficient new compounds to replace or substitute those that are being lost. And I think we're already in that situation, actually. I think the rate of removal of compounds from the market probably exceeds the rate of discovery by about 10 to 1.
So putting that into context, roughly how many new active ingredients are we bringing into Europe every year at the moment?
Well, it varies from year to year, but an average at the moment would be around 5. Of course, there are more new products, but products are often based on existing chemistry, and the problem with resistance is that if a pest is resistant to one area of chemistry, it will be resistant to all the products in that area, generally speaking. So it's not good enough just to make another version of the same thing. You've actually got to have something genuinely different, with a different target site, different mode of action, if you are going to counter the problem.
So if we look at, for example, mode of action on an important pathogen like Septoria, how many new modes of action have been developed in the last 20 years, for example?
Well, we had 2 main new modes. The strobilurins came in during the late 1990s. They unfortunately went down to resistance from 2002 onwards and are no longer effective against that particular pathogen. We've now got a group being launched called complex 2 inhibitors. They're also respiratory inhibitors, but affecting a different site. And we know from work that's been done already that they may be at risk of resistance, although they're being launched in such a way that we hope that this will not develop. But we're really very dependent on chemistry that came onto the market really 25 years ago for the control of this particular pathogen, which is the most important disease of wheat in northwest Europe. And if some of the recommendations of the new regulations go through, we could actually lose the triazoles, which are really the cornerstone of control of Septoria in wheat at the moment.
And when you say we lose the triazoles, what sort of impact would that have on agriculture and on sustainability and your ability as scientists to maintain the performance of the remaining portfolio?
Well, I think, talking just for cereals at the moment, triazoles are the cornerstone of any fungicide program, and if we remove them from the program, we'd really be putting intense pressure on the other chemicals that we can use, and putting them more at risk of themselves being compromised by resistance.
To what extent have we as chemists actually created this problem?
That's a very interesting question. Obviously, I think the use of some of the chemistry initially might have been naive in the sense that we exposed these biological agents to selection over periods of time without realising fully the implications of doing that. I think we're a lot smarter than that now, and in actual fact, when new chemistry comes to the market, careful measures are taken to try and protect its activity in practice by diversification and by mixing with other chemistry. So that goes precisely back to the point that we made initially, that if you don't have that diversity, if you don't have the options of that diversity, then inevitably you're going to go back to where we started from, which possibly was a single fix approach. A single fix approach has proved in practice to be fallible and non-sustainable.